Welcome to this ATA Insights webinar. Thank you for your ongoing interest and support of our webinar program. Today's session will begin in 2 minutes. ATA Insights Webinars is an online platform for the dissemination of professional renewable energy knowledge across international borders. Our aim is to democratize access to information, for innovation to spread faster, and to make the industry more competitive. And we do this through our online sessions, open to all our members. Every year we do more than 100 sessions with over 250 speakers, 50,000 attendees from more than 50 countries. To participate in the session today, use the chat on the right-hand side to introduce yourself, your company, and where you're joining from. Under the screen, you will find the Q&A box, where you can send your questions for the speakers. We will get to as many as we can today. We're recording this session, and we will send you a link to the materials in a few days. Please consider supporting our content creation for the webinar program. Contact us on the email on screen. Well, thank you very much and welcome everyone, ladies and gentlemen, to this really exciting all-female, for the third time in this program, more than 300 webinars, panel about Power to X, market, opportunity, costs. We're going to be looking into this very exciting new industry. Can't really say it's a new industry, but we're growing towards it. And with me today, I have three amazing experts on the topic that are going to cover different areas of this topic. And I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves so that you can get to know them a little bit if you haven't already. And first, I'd like to ask Carola, please, can you introduce yourself shortly and unmute your microphone? Perfect.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carola. I'm from the German Engineering Industries Association. I manage a platform on Power to X. I'm based in Brussels, and we represent over 100 companies along the whole value chain of Power to X.
Thank you very much, Carola. Now I'd like to ask Elizabeth. Please, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning from Washington, D.C. I'm calling from the International Finance Corporation, the private sector arm of the World Bank, where I work on the climate business department. So green hydrogen is a huge opportunity and growing interest to us. So we're hoping to better understand opportunities for investment.
Thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, Sarah, could you please introduce yourself shortly?
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Quiala. I'm heading the global business development at Wärtsilä's energy business. Wärtsilä is one of the key companies in global power generation, especially focusing on supporting high renewable power systems with flexibility for battery energy storage. And we are also doing a lot of R&D in Power to X. And my team is especially looking at its future feasibility in 100% renewable power systems. Really happy to be here today.
Thank you very much to the three of you. We're going to learn a lot, whether you're a newcomer to this technology or whether you already know quite a lot. I can see there are people from Japan, I've seen Ethiopia, I've seen Myanmar, I've seen a lot of people from Europe. Welcome, everyone. Elizabeth, thank you very much for making the effort. I don't even want to think what time it is in Washington right now, but it's quite early. So thank you very much all for making the effort. There is a lot of people here. I'd like to ask Carola, who's going to be our first speaker, to prepare your screen and to also take your mute off, and just a few messages. Again, you heard them in the video, but we're recording. We will send you the material, so you don't have to worry about that. And please, for your questions, make sure you send them through the Q&A at the bottom, not the chat, because in the chat they get lost with all the other chatter. And in the Q&A, we can manage them properly. And the way we're going to do it today is Carola is going to speak, then Elizabeth, then Sarah, and each they're going to cover slightly different areas, in this topic, because it's obviously very multifaceted. And then from then, we'll take as many questions as we can. And please keep sharing where you're coming from. It's really, really exciting to always see it. And even us, we are, at the moment in different places in Europe, in Washington. So we're all really joining from different places. Carola, please take your mic off mute, which is at the top at the moment on your screen, and then you are ready to go. Perfect.
So I hope everybody's seeing my slides and everybody's hearing me. Well, thanks again, Belen, for having me today. It's really exciting to speak about the opportunities of Power to X. As I mentioned, I work for VDMA, the German Mechanical Engineering Industries, and actually I'm trying to go through my slides, but nothing's happening.
Try the cursor keys, the little arrows.
This is what I'm trying.
It's not working?
Ah, no, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So I manage a platform of around 100 companies, which you can see here, and we do a lot of activities on Power-to-X, like interest representation vis-a-vis political institutions, technical cooperation, like norms and standards, interfaces like this, cooperation on research activities, trade fairs. We will have a virtual trade fair in March, actually, due to the coronavirus, own webinar series. So if you're interested in that, obviously do get in touch. Power-to-X is an exciting solution, which has become more important and more talked about since obviously the Paris Agreement and the goals of climate neutrality. As you all know, today, quite excitingly, the European Parliament will have a vote on the European climate law, which basically will make it legally binding for the European Union to become climate neutral by 2050. So these are exciting times for new solutions like Power-to-X. And you may have heard that China recently announced also to become more ambitious. What we now need is to not only decarbonize the electricity sector, which we have done quite well in the past 10 years or so, but we now really need to focus on the other sectors as well, like industry, buildings, and transport, and this will be more difficult technology-wise. Most of these sectors are hard to abate sectors, as you probably will know. So what we need is not only green electrons, but also green molecules. And this is basically what Power-to-X is about. As you can see here in this slide, hydrogen has been talked a lot about, and hydrogen is basically at the center point of Power-to-X. But you can do so much more with hydrogen. You can convert it into synthetic gas or liquid fuels, and basically then use it for aviation, for shipping, for trucks, for furnaces, and also for gas power stations, so for the electricity sector as energy storage. And I'll very briefly go through this because it's well, a chemical slide, and I don't want to make this a chemical lecture. Also, I'm not a chemist, but as you see, basically the production processes and products here of Power-to-X. So at the beginning, as I mentioned, our renewable energy is and producing hydrogen, and either you can use the hydrogen directly, like in a fuel cell, for instance, or in a gas power station, but you can also produce green ammonia, methanol. You have Fischer-Tropsch processes whereby you can produce synthetic diesel, synthetic kerosene for the aviation industry, which is very exciting because obviously this is a way to decarbonize the aviation sector. And you can produce synthetic methanol for the maritime shipping, for instance. You need these kinds of molecules that are higher in energy density to decarbonize those sectors as well. Hydrogen has been around for a long time. It's been talked about for a long time, but with the goals of climate neutrality, we think that it's now here to stay, really also as a business opportunity. What you see here is a chart basically that which shows that hydrogen strategies around the world are very quickly emerging. You know about Japan and South Korea. Germany has launched a hydrogen strategy just this summer. And the European hydrogen strategy, this is what I will talk about a little bit more in detail, also has been launched this July. So we think it's here to stay, given also the challenges and the ambitious path we have ahead. So what is the European hydrogen strategy about? Basically, we have an intermediate goal for 2024, which has 6 gigawatt of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers capacity. This is supposed to replace the existing hydrogen production, which at the moment is grey hydrogen, so has CO2 emissions. There will be a regulation for liquid hydrogen markets. We expect a quota on power to liquid for the aviation sector by the end of this year, also towards the ramp up to 2030. And the European Union wants to start the planning of a hydrogen infrastructure, so probably gas pipelines and things like that. By 2030, the goal is to have 40 gigawatt of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers within Europe installed. So this is a very ambitious goal, but we think it's absolutely feasible technology-wise. And the European Union plans to have another 40 gigawatt of hydrogen as imports. There will be new applications for steel and transport. The Commission talks about hydrogen valleys in parallel to silicon valleys. So we really want to be ahead of technology, and this also includes, again, the infrastructure. And the sort of long-term perspective in 2050 is that there will be a scale-up to all hard to decarbonize sectors, that there is an expansion of hydrogen-derived synthetic fuels. This is especially for the maritime and the aviation sector. That there will be a European-wide infrastructure network to transport the hydrogen and derived gases and fuels, and that it will be within Europe an open international market and internationally with the euro as a benchmark. So the European Union really wants to embrace this as an industry policy opportunity, but also as a climate policy opportunity. Now, I talked about imports as an opportunity. We at VDMA do not only consider that hydrogen and derived products can be produced within Europe, where there are lots of places, sunny places, lots of places with wind where you have renewable energy. But given that we need so much more, we also think that this is an opportunity for international trade. Just think about all those places in the world where there's so much heat, sun, wind, where you can produce these products. And given that these are fuels or gases, they can be easily transported. You don't need those transmission grids you have in the electricity sector. You need the container ships that we already have today. And this is specifically an opportunity for all those oil exporting regions in the world at the moment that need to find a new business model and a new business case as we approach the climate neutrality in 2050. So what are the opportunities that we see for our industry? So you should expect in the next decade a significant ramp up of the hydrogen production. We will see a move from the currently installed base of electrolyzers in the megawatt range to the gigawatt size of capacities. And this will contribute to benefiting from economies of scale for electrolyzers and also drive down the capex. Just bear in mind that the EU target, 2 times 40 gigawatt, alone indicates a cumulative market size for electrolyzers of 40 billion euros within the EU in 2030. So capital-wise, there's a lot of investment going on in the next 10 years. The target sectors will be transport, so aviation and maritime, as I mentioned, and industry, but also electricity or using hydrogen as an energy storage in the electricity sector. But we should not forget that we also have the transport sector, the road sector, and e-fuels should also play a role there. Think about long distance, think about heavy duty. We have the combustion engine at the moment. We could use those e-fuels also for the vehicle stock that we have on the roads today. And think about the power-to-X energy carriers, which could become an important commodity for international energy markets, where different markets, different regions can benefit from these new business models, green business models, as we go along towards 2050. Thank you very much, and I'm excited to discussing your questions.
Thank you very much, Carola. This has been a great presentation, a great intro. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing that screen. And of course, Carola's details are on her presentation. We will send you the materials so you'll have access and you'll be able to speak to her if you have any specific questions or you want to begin like maybe a business conversation. Next, I'd like to invite Elizabeth to please also share your screen in your presentation. The questions are already rolling in, but don't be shy. We will try to get as many as we can, but as you know, we always utilize the time as best we can at the end. Elizabeth, we can see your slides. Just make sure you take the microphone off, which is at the top of your screen at the moment. Perfect.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me, Belén, and no worries. It's definitely early on the East Coast of the US, but for green hydrogen, I'd get up early any day. It's also very exciting to see all of the different people how international our attendees are. I'm seeing people from Indonesia, India, Philippines, Morocco, South Africa. This is great and makes even getting up early even better, because it means I get to reach all of you folks who sometimes are a bit out of reach from time zones. So as I mentioned earlier, IFC is the private sector arm of the World Bank Group, and our clients are therefore private sector entities. We invest only in emerging markets. I work within the climate business department, which is a bit unique in that it works across all of our different verticals, so infrastructure, manufacturing, agribusinesses, services, financial institutions, to amplify the amount of climate-related investments that we make across our industries. And our current focus is clean energy, of course, climate smart cities, green buildings, green finance, and climate smart ag. And green hydrogen is in many ways touches all of these focuses, and is therefore becoming increasingly interesting and something that we're actively learning about. So it's great to be here and learning from everyone else. So before starting, I just want to highlight 4 key differences that we see today when compared to the quote unquote failed first hydrogen phase in the early 90s. The climate regulations are much stronger. Carola gave us a great overview of that. The Paris Agreement, of course, EU is hands down leading the way in green hydrogen policy approaches. So we're pretty excited about what that means for the reduction of prices for electrolyzers. Number 2, the cost of producing hydrogen from clean sources has fallen dramatically. We see LCOEs, below $25 and for solar, and it's falling even lower in other locations. So we're really excited as to how we can leverage those forms of energy and convert them into green hydrogen. Thirdly, hydrogen technologies have improved in cost and performance. So electrolyzers and fuel cell solutions are working better than ever before, with better lifetime, system efficiencies, and they cost less, which is really important for our clients. And lastly, the technological infrastructure to support the hydrogen energy system is now available. So fuel cell mobility sector is a good example in which the advent of battery electric vehicles has ensured that electric drivetrains are widely available, effective, and increasingly affordable. So these drivetrains are essential for fuel cell vehicles, which at its core is essentially an electric vehicle that derives its power from hydrogen. And just an overview of the structure of how I'll talk about this today is that I'll start with a perspective on emerging markets, of course. So throughout any of my slides, it'll be heavily focused on emerging markets and, of course, climate. And then I will share some of the potential applications and ecosystem in emerging markets that we see, near-term investment opportunities, and then how to actually lock in these investments. So we've learned a lot and heard a lot about how green hydrogen is such an exceptional opportunity, but what does that really look like? So in emerging markets, we see that there's a significant opportunity to reduce GHG emissions. They currently are responsible for over 50% globally, and that's only going to increase with population increases, increasing urbanization and industrialization. Green hydrogen, of course, is zero emissions, and in some cases, it's even more affordable. And when locally produced, it has significant job opportunities and can really bolster local economic development, which is essential for all of our work. And this is also imperative for energy security. We've seen oil prices just make some head spin this past couple of months. So, as much as you can have a steady and dependable supply of energy, the better, especially in some of these off-grid locations. And of course, emerging markets are only becoming more appealing for clean energy investors. IFC recently did a report on offshore wind specifically, and some of our analysis found that there's something in Africa, I think, like double the amount of offshore wind opportunity as demand currently is. So it's massive, and if we can figure out how to harness that, then our clean energy future is looking even more near. So in 2018, more clean power generating capacity was built in fossil fuels in emerging markets. Just to reiterate that point, that emerging markets are becoming a lot more appealing to investors. And then the need for versatility, of course, is super important as well. Our clients are always looking for access to clean energy and also have it be easy to store, transport, and repurpose. So this is particularly interesting for island communities. We've also looked at mining applications, so forklifts, those are already quite proven. And of course, integrating variable renewable energy into grids. So this is a graphic, and Carla showed a similar slide. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but the right side of the screen, the applications, is the most interesting to me. Of course, transportation, and we, at least at World Bank Group, think that this is going to be one of the strongest opportunities in our clients. But of course, power and heat, and then the fertilizer for agriculture and uninterruptible power supply. So today, only 4% of hydrogen is green. So we have a lot of work to do, but thankfully there's so much interest. So as far as understanding our investment opportunities, a lot of this is actually, all of this is outlined in a recent report that the World Bank put out in collaboration with IFC through its SMAP program. It's called Green Hydrogen and Emerging Markets, and you can Google it and you can find it, and I'll share the link as well. But through that analysis and research, we spoke to a lot of people, and from that, we've kind of deduced the following locational priorities and then application priorities. So of course, I mentioned island and remote communities that are energy importers. The amount of the cost of a lot of these fuels is incredibly high. And in the face of climate change, when we have even more high-risk events, it's going to be even more important that they have energy security. Of course, areas with excellent renewable resources. Chile is a great example. They have an immense amount of solar. So we see a huge opportunity there. And also as an energy storage solution, this is interestingly how green hydrogen kind of caught our attention. We do a lot of work with batteries and have been trying to really amplify our investment scope in batteries and energy storage. And so we thought like, okay, green hydrogen is going to be a sort of energy storage technology that will allow us to store across seasons. It's super exciting for our clients. Of course, we've only learned more since then, but remains a pretty important priority. And middle income countries that have existing gas infrastructure. So we are able to invest in a lot of middle income countries. And I think that'll also be be where we will see a lot of our near term investment. And then of course, heavily polluted metropolitan areas across all of these locations for fuel cell bus transport solutions. And then applications, a little overlap in the first left slide, but telecoms is one that we see particularly interesting, and we've been exploring this, and there has been some demonstration in China, India, Indonesia, Philippines, and South Africa. Small stationary fuel systems, of course, large hydrogen or fuel cell projects, as I mentioned, Argentina. Mali is quite interesting for mining, off-grid mining services. Mobility, fuel cell buses in China, Costa Rica, and Malaysia. And we have an interesting upstream project in Costa Rica where we're working with a company called Ad Astra to understand the costs of what actually a fleet of buses, fuel cell buses, would cost in one of their regions where they have a lot of renewable energy. Of course, they have tons, but the closer you are, the more economically viable it is. And finally, I mentioned forklifts. So how do we actually lock in these investments? Of course, there are substantial challenges to attracting investors, many of which I think we'll hear more about and are quite clear. For us, the most important challenge in our client countries is the insufficient scale and track record. So for IFC to be able to actually structure an investment, we need to have proven technologies that have been replicated in other locations. So this is our most important one. And so for that reason, we are trying to develop a lot of pilot projects like the one I mentioned in Costa Rica to better understand costs and figure out like how can we actually structure these deals. Of course, technical and safety expertise is essential for both installation and maintenance and can be a challenge in a lot of our client countries. The technology is capital intensive with high maintenance requirements. So this is another consideration that makes it a little more difficult. And then of course, the perception that deploying these new technologies is going to be higher risk than elsewhere. This is something that we frequently try to challenge and better understand why those perceptions are are as they are, and through events like this, hopefully kind of dispel some myths. And of course, investor lack of awareness ties into this as well. And we do a lot of work with fellow investors to better understand different levers. And the solutions, of course, focus more on developing countries. Europe, as I said, is really leading the way. And I think we will have a barrage of lessons learned and best practices coming out of Europe. And it's sort of our duty, I think, as IFC and the World Bank, to really understand, in real time what we're learning and how we're learning it, so that we can inform green hydrogen strategies at the national level in our client countries. So policy is a huge driver, and I think as we've seen with climate policies and Paris Agreement and NDCs, it's going to be essential in order to really scale up green hydrogen technologies and better understand how it fits into the economy, whether it's an integration into a transport policy, or if it's a broader renewable energy policy, or if it's any sort of industrial policy as well. Of course, importantly, as I mentioned, 3 different ways that we can use green hydrogen is the opportunity for demand aggregation. So if we can identify opportunities across these multiple sectors, then we can really exploit economies of scale and reduce the demand risk. And of course, fostering cooperation between all of our clients and internationally. And then part of that, of course, building capacity to actually develop and operate these projects. So I mentioned the report. I'm not going to go too into it, but if you Google green hydrogen World Bank, it'll come up, and I'll share the link. But this is the outline of it, and that's what it looks like. So please find it. It's been already kind of made a splash, and I think it's really only going to amplify our visibility. And then after this is just the first of many. We're planning one on offshore wind application, or how to integrate green hydrogen production with offshore wind, and as well a deep dive on specific applications in our client countries. And while casting all emerging markets into one category can be a bit reductive, these markets are incredibly diverse. You have everything from lower middle income countries to very low income countries. So there's a huge variety of things that we can look at. But as soon as we have conversations and start talking about it more, I think we can better understand that. And I don't want to take up too many more seconds, but the African Hydrogen Partnership is pretty interesting. And scattered throughout the report, you'll find a lot of different case studies similar to this one, but this is a stakeholder group with offices in the UK and Zimbabwe, and they're actively pursuing the development of a green hydrogen network. So you can see this is a visualization. Of course, it's not reality yet, but someday if we could visualize this becoming a reality, I think we can all see how impactful that would be. And Carla mentioned as well the importance of expanding into international markets from EU. So North Africa is going to be at the top of the list, I think there. There's also a huge amount of renewable energy resources there that are performing quite well. So if you have any questions, I will monitor the Q&A, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. It's always nice to see that there's someone working on the just transition side of things, so that not only like a few countries are getting like the development, but there is investment and there is technological advancement in many places at the same time in the places where it's most needed and with the best resources. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to ask you to stop sharing the screen. And maybe perfect, so that Sarah can show hers, and then we're going to delve a little bit deeper into projects themselves and costs, and so I'm really looking forward to hearing that. I've seen a few questions, so I'm just going to make sure for those people that came a little bit later on perhaps, and they might have not heard me, this is not the only time that you're going to be able to see these materials and hear Sarah, Elizabeth, and Carola. We're recording it, and we will make the recording available so that you can review it or you can share it with your colleagues, okay? So don't worry, you will have access to the materials. And Sarah, without further ado, we can see your screen perfectly, and I think we can hear you, so go for it.
Thank you, Belen, and thank you also, Carola and Elizabeth, for a really nice presentation. Really glad to hear so many of you here today. I already introduced myself in the beginning, but just as a recap, my name is Quiala, and I'm heading the global business development at Wärtsilä Energy Business. We are Wärtsilä as a company. We produce solutions for power generation, so flexible engine-based generation, battery energy storage, and we are also doing a lot of research on Power-to-X technology. So basically the full palette to support the future high renewable or even 100% renewable energy systems that we will see in the future. I was asked today to talk about the Power-to-X fuels, their global market potential and economic viability. We have already heard a couple of really great presentations on the topic, but stay on your seats. I bet I will still be able to share with you quite a few interesting facts that you didn't know yet about this topic. So I will first speak about the markets, then about the economic viability, and I will conclude with sharing a really interesting and cool case study on a collaboration project that I'm also personally working on here in Finland, together with one electric utility, Vantaan Energia, to make the district heating production completely fossil fuel free. I will start with just a little bit on what is the role of Power-to-X in the future high renewable, 100% renewable energy systems. This is here based on the power system optimization and the long-term planning that we are focusing a lot of work at Wärtsilä to understand the challenges of our customers and also the optimal future power systems. And based on this modeling, the research we do, it's completely clear that Power-to-X will be the ingredient that enables the final push to 100% renewable electricity system. This is a technology that together with battery energy storage will be used for storing energy. This one is specifically for long-term power system balancing. So when we have seasonal variations because of monsoon season, winter, summer variations, where we have for a longer time periods less renewable electric sources available, it makes sense for the other parts of the year to produce synthetic fuels with the excess renewables and then utilize those in power generation at times when there are lower renewable energy sources available. And that's really enabling us to have a reliable, cost-efficient, 100% renewable power system. The other obvious use for synthetic fuels will be for carbon neutral renewable transportation. At least Karula was already talking a lot about it. And of course, the key element for both of these aspects that we have access to renewable electricity as a raw material. There have been slides like this showing the production process, intermediate and final products for Power-to-X fuels already in the previous presentations. But I wanted to share this slide just to point out a couple of key points. First one is that whatever the synthetic fuel or Power-to-X fuel, whether it's for power generation, for transportation, whether it's gaseous or liquid, we only need three main elements for that. And those are renewable electricity and water to produce hydrogen. And then we need CO2 in the first stage on fossil point sources, later or bio-based point sources, but also it can be captured directly from the air to produce the fuels. Something that I guess it's quite logical is that the more process steps you have, of course, the costs increase. So the more complicated fuels, of course, add on costs in comparison to more simple products like hydrogen or also methane, for example, methanol that have fewer steps in them. But the key point here is that all the fuels that we use in the current systems for transportation, for power generation, are possible to produce with Power-to-X processes. And I think that speaks for itself for the market potential. We have a possibility to decarbonize by utilizing these fuels. Just to give a flavor on what that market potential could be, and also to give a little bit of a promotion of a really cool tool that we have online. I will share these from the power generation context. So Wärtsilä has actually published on an address wärtsilä.com/atlas a tool that's called Atlas of 100% renewable energy, where the team of power system modeling experts from my team, they have actually optimized the cost optimal 100% renewable energy system in 145 countries globally. So if we would to build back better today to recreate the 100% renewable electric systems from the scratch, what would be the capacities and their utilization? And okay, in the website itself, you can find so many interesting facts, but just looking at power to X. So if we were in a 100% renewable power system today, the optimal way to run that system would be that there would be about 900 gigawatts of electrolysis capacity to produce synthetic fuels that would then be used in flexible thermal power plants. And those fuels would produce about 3 to 4% of global electricity demand. The rest would be from wind, solar, and hydro, geothermal. Of course, there would also be the battery energy storage and actually in much larger quantities to supply the day-to-day variation. But the role for power to X would be extremely important to maintain the reliability and enable the cost optimal solution. And of course, in addition to this demand, there's everything that comes from transportation and also from industry. So I think I can leave it there for the market potential point of view. Other graph that I think many in the audience are really interested in knowing is about the economic viability. And I just to give an example and illustrate the key points that impact on power to X fuels feasibility. I have here one example of a feasibility of a synthetic gas production, and I wanted to use it just to illustrate the key factors that impact the competitiveness. So here on the graph, I have a assumed price of electricity, two power to X fuels, so hydrogen, synthetic methane, divided into cost components to give their levelized cost of fuel, and the price of a let's say a competing product of fossil natural gas with two price levels. And just to walk you through the graph and what we can learn from it. On this example, we start with the electricity price, key ingredient in the electrolysis process. And we have here the price of 30 euros per megawatt hour. I think in today's price level, this is quite close to a lot of countries that we have in Europe, especially now that the electricity market prices have been quite low. Sorry. Because of efficiency losses, the cost component of electricity becomes already in the hydrogen production cost quite high. So it's maybe 2/3 of the overall levelized cost of fuel for the hydrogen. And of course, if we want to go one step further and also conduct the methanization project to make synthetic methane, there's a still higher cost element because of efficiency losses again. So one of the key conclusions we can make that low cost electricity is really a must for feasibility of power to X fuels. The good news of course are that the renewable electricity in itself is becoming cheaper and cheaper. And also in countries where we have electricity markets, more renewables means that we have lower average price levels, but more volatility. And the good thing is that on the electrolysis and also in the biomethanation process, these processes are really flexible. So it's really important that we can take advantage of all the low cost hours, and there are a lot of them, also that we can levelize the capital costs to over a large amount of running hours. So second part of I will not speak too much about the OPEX part because that's still quite small, but the other really key element is of course the capital costs. On hydrogen, because we only have the electrolysis costs, it's a bit lower, maybe 1/3 of the costs. But currently on the synthetic methane, even though that we would have basically almost 24/7 operation throughout the year, except for some maintenance, maybe some one-off price spikes, it would make up still half of the cost level. The solutions to that, and I would say the good news are that in the synthetic methane, we actually have 3 process parts, so the electrolysis, CO2 capture, and also the methanation part. The good news are that all of these are really good for modularization. So hopefully we will see similar cost reduction curves that we have seen in the solar and our wind industry in the past. But obviously, also if we compare to, let's say, the current incumbent fuels or the fossil natural gas, these fuels today can be only feasible if there are subsidies available to basically kickstart the industry and cover some of the capital costs. The third element to the feasibility is then the support for creation of the market for power-to-X fuels. And big part is to do with how the fossil fuels are priced. I have here cost levels. 30 euros per megawatt hour is, at least end of last year, was still pretty typical in Europe. Now, because of the COVID situation, is even lower than that. But in some countries, my own home country, Finland, as an example, we already have quite a heavy taxation that brings up the price and obviously make the cost gap to carbon neutral fuels lower. So taxation of fossil fuels, price of CO2 emissions, and the other hand, regulations that somehow mandate the use of carbon neutral fuels, synthetic fuels, and that way create the market for that are of course key for the utilization. But this is just a bit of a let's say teaser and also to bring all of you who are interested on the fuels some facts and insights on what are the main cost elements there. Finally, I promise to say a few words of one very actual, very concrete project that we have ongoing here in Finland. And I would like to give a big shout out to Vantaan Energia or Vantaa Energy, that are one of the Finnish energy utilities producing district heating in the city of Vantaa and also producing electricity to the Nordic electricity market. They have actually made a pledge to stop using all fossil fuels by year 2026. They are already a long way there, but one of the most challenging elements that they are facing is to get rid of fossil natural gas for those really cold winter days here in Finland, where they need to use heat boilers to top up the district heating network. And the concept that we are studying is to utilize their existing waste to energy plant and take all the raw material, electricity, clean water, CO2 emissions from the stacks, and make them into a process to produce synthetic methane that could then be transported through existing natural gas network and utilized in winter peaks for district heating. Surplus gas can then also be used for transportation, for example, for the trucks that already transport some of the waste to the waste to energy plant. This is a project that we have also been communicating publicly. The feasibility analysis is ongoing, and I'm really hopeful that this will be one of the first large scale commercial projects to be operational in Finland and maybe even one of the first ones globally. Thank you all for taking the time to listen.
Thank you very much, Sarah. This also was a very good presentation. We've seen some numbers and there are some questions about the numbers. So don't worry, you're going to get these materials. The emails of Sarah and of Carola are there, and also you can reach Elizabeth if you have any questions, okay? But for now, we have about 15 minutes to ask questions. So I'm going to start, if that's okay, and I'm going to open it to the three of you, take up, if there is a name in here, I'm going to start with that person, but feel free to add on, And some of the questions, about 10, you've already answered. So, some of the things probably you might have already gone through. But one of the questions that I had actually marked here, which I thought it was important, and also it's repeated time and time again, is the potential and the role of ammonia as a power fuel. And it's something that, at the moment we're hearing already news about plants being built and whatnot. So I wanted to hear each of your opinion. Perhaps you want to start, Sarah, and then we'll take it from there.
Yes, thank you, Belen. Ammonia is definitely one of the fuels for especially for the transportation sector. For Wärtsilä, we of course we are active both in marine power generation, marine engines, and on the energy side. Ammonia is one of the fuels that can be completely well utilized. I have to say I have not personally, or in my team, we are not studying it too much. So on this aspect, I would like to handle the floor maybe to Carola, Elizabeth to comment further. But I can definitely just say from the technical feasibility part that it's perfectly okay to utilize in these applications.
So Carola, Elizabeth, you want to add anything here?
Yes, ammonia. So we talk about ammonia mainly in the context of maritime shipping. We also have in our trade association the manufacturers of shipping engines. So they start to look for what are the fuels of the future, given that vessels have a very long investment cycle. So ammonia is one of the fuels that is talked about. But for the moment, with regards to which fuel will make it, it's probably quite early to say. So there are so many different forms of synthetic fuels around, yeah, it's very early at the moment to say which one of the fuels. I would rather expect a diversity of fuels. So probably methanol, ammonia, synthetic diesel, and things like that to come along, and different applications will use different kinds of fuels.
There was also questions about maritime transport, actually. Sorry, Elizabeth, go ahead.
No, I think that kind of covers it. I mean, no personal expertise to answer that question too much in more detail, but we do know that it is a large demand source for hydrogen. So I agree with Carla that it's a diverse approach necessary.
Yeah, thank you very much. There was this question about maritime transport a lot, and there was this announcement from Airbus, maybe like last week, saying that they're going to build a hydrogen plane, which I assume is harder than shipping. I'm guessing. It's harder. I don't have expertise on this, so definitely we're going in this direction of sorts. But we will see how things are going. One question that I get every time we do anything with hydrogen, every single time, is how do you store hydrogen appropriately and how do you transport it? Because it's a huge challenge, but also perhaps even a huge opportunity. So I wanted to open it. I don't know who would like to lead this. Elizabeth, you showed us like a really nice map of Africa, with a lot of like lines. So perhaps you can start, because this is a bigger challenge, I assume, in the developing world.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I think at least the way that we have our understanding of it, at least, and this is always evolving as well, is that as much as we can, use existing gas infrastructure, gas pipelines, is going to be, for us, the nearest opportunity. The African Hydrogen Partnership is sort of like, it's a really excellent example of what we could produce, but understanding the different connectors that will be required to sort of build that, if that's like a port and that can be exported, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. But beyond that, I think another thing worth commenting on is some safety concerns with hydrogen storage and transport. But I think that there's so much knowledge out there that it's more of a lack of information understanding. So I think that we have much to learn. But I'm eager to see what you guys think.
Carola, Sarah?
Yes. Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
Who wants to go? Sarah first. Go on.
I just wanted to add to that point that it's definitely something to take into consideration, and it's maybe also a timing issue. Also in my graph showing the relative differences on the price of or levelized cost of fuel for hydrogen and synthetic methane. it's of course excluding the cost of infrastructure modifications. So perhaps the hydrogen solving the problems or the challenges still around the transportation storage is something that will take a bit of time. Like Elizabeth saying, blending it in existing natural gas networks will solve something. But maybe we still have some way to go. So perhaps from the timing point of view, I could even see that the other synthetic fuels that can utilize the existing infrastructure, maybe even though more expensive, coming in first because they need less, let's say, redesigning of the infrastructures around us. And that would give time for maybe for hydrogen-based infrastructure to develop and then come in to really support the full-scale transition to a renewable world.
And Carola?
Nothing so much to add. Just as Sarah just said, hydrogen can be converted into other forms of gases and fuels and thereby easily transported. But I also wanted to comment on your what you said about the aviation sector. And yes, it's very exciting with Airbus. The hydrogen Airbus, I think, is coming out, or they plan it for 2035. And this will be an exciting, probably disruptive technology. Probably the plane will look really different to what we know. What is a plane looking at the moment? But also just think about we need to move fast, especially in the aviation sector, where security and safety concerns are very, very high. So this is where hydrogen as a power-to-liquid fuel, as a synthetic kerosene, can already be used today. So you have, if you use hydrogen in a Fischer-Tropsch plant and convert it into synthetic fuels, synthetic kerosene, you can already today blend it to 50% into the kerosene you have. So basically you could have, if you have the plants, you could already have today a 50% climate impact in the aviation sector. We only need the regulation and the marketplace to invest in those technologies.
Okay, a question that I think is quite important here to address too is the water feedstock side, especially because, you know, the places where the best solar energy usually don't necessarily have the better water. So the question here was address the importance of water feedstock, scarcity, value, and zero liquid discharge from desalination. So perhaps I'd like to ask on the technical side, you know, Sarah and Carola to add, and then perhaps also on the political sort of emerging countryside to Elizabeth. So Carola or Sarah, do you want to start? Sarah, you start? No, Carola. Okay, go on.
Well, yes, of course, you need water for water electrolysis. I can only comment on comparing it to other forms of renewable fuels, like bio-based fuels. And there's actually a good study by the German Environmental Agency on that, which basically says that with sustainable factors as water use and land use, producing hydrogen and power to liquid is much more sustainable than producing other forms of bio-based fuels. I can try to. I would have to look it up right now, but I try to find the study and put it into the chat.
This is really good that you say, but because actually there was a question specifically about why not gasify waste directly. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the link. And Sarah?
Thank you. I think Carola had a really good point. Maybe the aspect that I would like to bring out here is that, of course, the availability of water could then be added as to the list of factors that contribute to the market potential. So, of course, access to water resources is then one additional element that probably directs the first investments to places where this is considered as an advantage. Maybe places to my own home country where we see some quite good movement here, but of course also in the other places in the world. But otherwise, I support Carola's point, and I think there's quite a lot of research behind this topic.
And on the water management side in the emerging countries, Elizabeth?
So this is a question that we always ask anyone that we have a technical kind of opportunity to speak with. So I'm really happy to hear your thoughts on it. But I think something, and this is a huge issue for our client countries. I mean, many of them just don't have access to desalinated water. Something that we're interested in, like I mentioned previously, we're looking at offshore wind a lot. So the opportunity to produce hydrogen on the offshore wind structure itself with a desalination built in is kind of interesting. But I mean, understanding the costs of that are still a bit out of our hands. So it's a very important thing to consider. And as Sarah said, just reiterating that that's going to be another consideration for any sort of potential.
Great. I'd like to add two things that came in the way of questions, but really there are comments in the sense that, you know, we could spend hours and hours arguing them and still we wouldn't have an outcome. You know, someone says, how can you get 8,500 hours of renewables for 30 euros megawatt hour? Depends where you are, depends what you have built, you know. If you have a hydro like Nordic countries have, possibly it's even less. You know, if you have to build something new, definitely the 24/7 thing is a problem for many countries, you know, and batteries aren't really that cheap yet. And then there was also a comment here from Christian that says, I think it's in your presentation, Sarah, the difference between CapEx between hydrogen and synthetic methane astounds me. I saw very different figures which were marked much closer. So I don't know whether you want to say anything to that, but essentially, like, it's good, you know, that we're throwing around different figures and there are different opinions at least, and we're having a discussion around this.
Yeah, I can comment on that. And of course, this industry is still new. So I can also see that when we talk about this with suppliers, with our collaboration partners, you don't have such an established price level yet because each project is sort of unique. But to me, there's one kind of a factor that makes this price level, it makes a lot of sense to me. So when we talk about hydrogen production, there's the capital cost is mainly about the electrolysis equipment. But in methanation process, we have actually three different main parts of the process. So electrolysis, CO2 capture, and the methanation itself. But there's also all kinds of let's say, auxiliary systems to support the integration between these three different systems. So clearly there's more infrastructure, more process design engineering also related to that. But of course, anyone who's interested, if you have your project that you would like to study, we are available too. So you can also reach out afterwards, and we can take a look on the specific projects that you might have in mind.
Thank you very much. That's great. Yes, this is what this is about. It's about putting people together, you know, that are looking at doing projects together. So, you know, by all means, I'd like to ask the uncomfortable question now, and I left it for last, you know, because I love to be controversial, but then I don't know how much value it adds sometimes. So, and the question that I have for you guys is one that I don't know how politically correct it is, and I don't know how much you can say, but you know, I've been seeing this green hydrogen chatter forever, and I've been seeing this Power-to-X chatter for a long time. Yes, it's gathering, you know, sort of pace right now. But the question is simple, really. Do you think if we were in a situation where we are in a pandemic with the COVID recovery in front of us, if it was just a matter of climate change, you know, as an abstract concept, which is very real, but, you know, would we have seen this amount, these announcements, this like fast move? Is this COVID that is giving us this push to spend this money, hoping that it, you know, it kind of reignites the economy? I don't know who wants to start. How much is this a COVID product? Sarah, can I start with you maybe? This is an opinion base, yeah?
I can start, and I can also be controversial in saying that I think we would have seen more of this if there wasn't COVID. I think the momentum started already before. There's a big transition ongoing, and I would say that this whole COVID situation this year, it has slowed down the development. We probably would have seen already some announcements of even more projects.
This is awesome, actually. I never expected the super optimistic, but yay. so actually COVID was a bad thing. I don't know, I've seen this being announcements all of a sudden, and I'm like, All right, Carola, Elizabeth, do you want to add anything? Your opinion there?
Yes, I mean, you can see the European Green Deal was announced with the incoming of the new European Commission last year, and the discussion about climate neutrality within Europe had started last year. The Paris Agreement has been long talked about since 2015. So this is now really getting serious about these developments, and Corona might, well, it probably has prolonged developments or slowed down developments in the industry level, but maybe on the political level, obviously with all those finance programs that have been launched now, that the European Commission talks about new programs for the new economy, the green economy. So maybe in 2 years' time, we will think a bit differently about it and say, yes, initially it has slowed down, but then it has propelled and gained more momentum. But I would really say that if we are serious about climate change and if we are serious about climate neutrality, hydrogen and Power-to-X is here to stay, because we won't be able to do it without it.
And Elizabeth, last
I'm
thoughts?
glad that Sarah and Carla went first, because my gut reaction was, and I think that this comes also from, how we respond to policy announcements, is that any announcement that comes at the scale that it's come from the EU is like groundbreaking and really excellent for our client countries. So, I mean, I think, yes, it's absolutely true that the momentum to act on climate and invest in climate smart technologies, and specifically green hydrogen, was certainly happening. I think that COVID has, from an actual deployment perspective, certainly slowed things down, but from an awareness perspective has only amplified it. I mean, now I feel like I hear about green hydrogen everywhere I look. It's impossible to not see a headline or a new announcement. Whether these announcements turn into actual projects remains to be seen, but I mean, I'm able to have conversations with more of my colleagues now than I was able to before. And I think that, regardless of what actually, when push comes to shove, we see in a couple years, that the awareness has greatly increased. And that's quite important for us to get our investors situated and moving on green hydrogen.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your thoughts, guys. Thank you very much for sharing your know-how with us. And thank you everyone in the audience too for your time. It's very exciting to see so many people from so many countries, are interested in this topic. And yeah, we'll see you next time, because we haven't given up. We'll continue to create content around this topic, and hopefully we'll see you again in another webinar and you'll get to share with us again. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you for having me.